Should the Raiders trade for Bryce Young? Let me know down in the comments section with either a trade for or pass. The Carolina Panthers recently put their number 1 overall pick on the bench, and leading up to this game against the Raiders, I want to know, should the Raiders make the deal? Coming up here today on the Raiders Report, I'm going to tell you why the Raiders should and shouldn't trade for Bryce Young, and then at the very end of the show, I'm going to give you my honest opinion of whether or not I would do it. I'm also going to talk about my trade offer to Carolina that I think makes the most sense for both sides. I'm also going to give you a prediction of where I think Bryce Young ends up playing football, maybe this season or maybe next season. I'm Mitchell Renz, host of the Raiders Report, and if you're looking for free Raiders videos every single day, make sure you click that subscribe button. Here's why the Raiders should not trade for Bryce Young. The first reason is, that's why you should trade him, excuse me. This is why you should trade for Bryce Young. If you believe that the Panthers are to blame for everything going on and that it's not been a Bryce Young problem, the only reason why I would bring this up is because when you look at the way that this organization has been ran, and there's a lot of Raider fans out there, they go, well, you should get rid of Mark Davis. He's the reason for a lot of our issues over the past 20 years. If you have that mindset, you got to be able to bring that exact same energy to Carolina because their owner has not been good. I saw something here from Sanjeet, and I wanted to be able to bring it up because I 100% agree with him. Bryce Young was ruined because the Panthers' OC/play caller is bad. In my opinion, the quarterback position has been overvalued. People think that good quarterbacks win games, but good play callers are the real winners, which I agree and I disagree with that. Give me Kyle Shanahan or Andy Reid over any quarterback in the NFL. I don't agree with that. I will take Patrick Mahomes over Andy Reid. I would take Patrick Mahomes, I know Raider fans, sorry, over any play caller. But I do agree with the idea of Bryce Young has not been given a fair shake in terms of the play calling that has been going down with Carolina. Also, go back and look at all the players that they've traded away. It's been a bad organization. They've traded away Christian McCaffrey. They traded away Brian Burns. They traded away DJ Moore. When you look at what they traded away, it's just not a team that's done a lot to help Young. They did a lot to help him this offseason, but my point is I do think Carolina has done bad, and he needs a new spot to be able to go to. Let's go to the next reason here of why the Raiders should trade for Bryce Young. The Raiders need a franchise quarterback. That's an honest conversation. It's not going to be Gardner Minshew long time. It's not going to be Aidan O'Connell long time. I'm not saying that it's going to be Bryce Young, but can we look at each other here and just say, if you told me the quarterback with the highest upside right now, Bryce Young, has the higher upside than any quarterback we have on our roster, that's a cold, hard fact. And if Young ends up being that number 1 overall pick that you thought he was going to be, because he was a locked and loaded number 1 overall guy. He was somebody that I was very confident in. I think everybody was confident in him. Nobody thought Bryce Young was going to be this bad. There was reports that the Texans would have taken him number 1 over C.J. Stroud. My point is this. If he could turn out to be the guy that everybody thinks that he was, and just Carolina was bad, the Raiders could be a Super Bowl caliber team. The next reason of why the Raiders should trade for Bryce Young, if you don't love any of the quarterbacks in the 2025 draft class, and it's kind of a difficult decision this early on in the year, but this is a conversation that needs to be had. For me personally, the top 5 quarterbacks that I would target if I'm the Raiders next year, Cam Ward is number 1, and it's not close for me at this point. I do like Jalen Milroe. I think Carson Beck has shown some flashes of good. Sure, Quinn Ewers is battling an injury, but to me, he's still going to be a top quarterback taken. And then Shedeur Sanders. If at any point you look at those 5 names and you go, I'd rather have Bryce Young over this guy, I'd rather have Bryce Young over that guy. Because to me right now, the only name that I would take Bryce Young over Shedeur Sanders. I'm not afraid to say that. All those other 4 names, I would take those other 4 QBs over Bryce Young based on what I know right now. Another reason of why the Raiders should trade for Young, it's if you don't think that this team's going to be able to get one of those top quarterbacks or pay somebody in 2025. Dak Prescott just signed a brand new deal with the Dallas Cowboys. He's probably off the table. But then I'm a person that believes in this squad where I don't think we're going to be in the top 10. I don't think we're going to be in the top 15 picks because I believe in this Raiders defense that much. So if you go into that mindset, you go, well, if we can't draft the top quarterback, maybe we can sign one. When you look at the quarterbacks in the free agent class next season, there's not a lot of names that inspire a lot of confidence. Like Russell Wilson, Sam Darnold, Justin Fields. And I know that, Darnold and Fields have looked pretty good so far, but if the Raiders go into the 2025 season with any of these QBs as their starter, and I get it, you still got Gardner another year, you still got Aidan O'Connell, but we got to be looking at a brand new quarterback next offseason. That's an honest take. The next reason of why the Raiders should consider trading for the Carolina quarterback is the Raiders play the Panthers this week. And this is a kind of a dumb reason, but it is a reason that I would consider right now. And it's not going to be valid next week. If I'm Las Vegas and I go, do I want to be 2-1 or 1-2? That's a really big difference right now for Antonio Pierce. If I'm AP, I'm also go, it's my home opener at Allegiant Stadium. This is the first time I get to show Raider fans who I am. And I'm not saying you go out and make the trade and you start Bryce Young. That ain't it at all. But what I would do is I go, all right, Bryce, I'm going to trade for you right now. I'm going to use everything that you know. That way I can get an inside look on Andy Dalton, somebody who I have no tape on whatsoever. This game for the Raiders, 2-1, 1-2, is a monumental game. And if anybody plans on watching this game this weekend, I hope you watch it with Jeremy Chuggs and I. Hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications. Last week, we had over 153,000 people tune into the Raiders Report. I'm trying to get to 176,000 subs by game day, and we're about 960 away. We've had probably close to 2,000 subs in the last 48 to 72 hours, and I know not a lot of people know what we do. I promise you this, if you want commitment to excellence, pull up on a Raiders game day here on the Raiders Report. Let's go to the final reason of why, if I'm the Raiders, I would trade for Bryce Young. It's not going to cost a lot of money, and it's not going to cost you a lot in a trade. The Panthers, if they trade away Young, it's going to cost them $6.1 million in dead money this year and then $12.3 million in dead money next season. By them benching Young, they already made the decision that they are moving on. And quite frankly, that amount of money, it's not a lot of money for a billionaire like Tepper. The Raiders would only owe Bryce Young $10.1 million over the next 2 seasons. So it's not $10.1 this season. Technically, Young is cheaper than what you got right now in Gardner Minshew. So if I'm going to talk about what it's going to cost, this is what I believe it would cost the Raiders to make a trade for Bryce Young. I'm saying it's probably going to be somewhere around, if you offered Carolina a 3rd-round pick and a 5th-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. So if you're Las Vegas, you get to keep your 1st, you get to keep your 2nd, but you take on that, which I know it's a lot for a QB that's been bad, and Bryce Young has been bad. But if you believe that it's not a Bryce Young problem, it's a Carolina Panthers problem because it's been an organization that's been shitly ran for the past, I don't even know how long. This is a deal where I think it's a good deal for somebody that was just drafted number 1 overall last year. He was the number 1 overall pick. Think about what Carolina gave up to go get him. Now, I'll tell you whether or not I would do this trade at the end of today's video, but I got to sit up here and say that this to me is the projected cost. You could also see maybe a Justin Fields trade situation where there's a conditional pick thrown in here. It is what it is, but I got to know from everybody that watches this show, would you make this trade? Give me a yes, give me a no down below if this is what it cost to get the former Heisman Trophy winner, to get the former number 1 overall pick, to get the quarterback that just got benched by the Carolina Panthers. Let me know yes or no down below. My answer is going to be coming up here later on the show. I'm going to tell you whether or not I would do that trade. So make sure you stick around, watch till the very end, because I think I got a take that's going to surprise quite a bit of people. Now, if you don't already know where you should get your tickets, if you're planning on going to a Raiders game, if you plan on going to Las Vegas this weekend, or if you plan on really making a trip anywhere, if you like having a good time, Game Time, shout out to them for sponsoring the Raiders Report. I love being able to go watch football games. I love being able to go watch any event because it creates those lasting memories. I can remember when Chuggs and I went to go see Drake. I can go remember when I went to go see Kevin Hart. I can remember when Alex was able to go watch the Raiders and Cowboys in a preseason game. Why? Because when you use Game Time, it's not only the experience then, it's the memories that you save. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS, that's CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's Game Time. Now, the thing that Game Time really wants me to tell you all about, and, you know, this is what Jeremy wants me to tell you guys about as well, is the Game Time picks. These are the best deals available for that game. Now, if you look right now, the best ticket deal that they got going on they'll show you it's like, hey, this is 10% off. This is the top 1 percentile of ticket deals. This ticket's maybe like $50 off. I love Game Time because I don't feel like I waste my time. I know exactly what I'm going to get. I love the all-in pricing, so when I go to checkout, I'm looking, I'm like, all right, this ticket is $195. In fact, I found a Raiders ticket against Carolina this week for $195. I mean, imagine you go to checkout and you're like, all right, that's $195. You go to other ticketing apps, you think you're going to pay $195, and all of a sudden after taxes, fees, and all the other BS, you're paying $300. Game Time's not going to do that to you. They're going to hook you up with the lowest price guaranteed. And if anybody wants to go get started with Game Time, download the Game Time app. That link is going to be available to you all down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. And shout out to them for hooking up Raider Nation. And when we talk about sponsors a lot of times, I want to be able to look you guys, in the eyes here when I say this. It's like when you get started with Game Time, when you get started with any sponsor that we have, it helps us out here a lot at Chat Sports. We're able to keep these shows for free because of our sponsors. So if you plan on buying tickets, just remember, this helps Mitch and Chugs. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, coming up here, this is why the Raiders shouldn't trade for Bryce Young. I know in the top half of the show I talked about why they should. Now we're going to get into the reason why you shouldn't. And I'm doing this live show right now. 67% of the people watching are saying that they would not trade for Bryce Young. The first reason why you wouldn't do it is, let's be real, he's been terrible. He has been awful. And there's conversations right now that could go down that, if I'm a Raider fan, like when you ask somebody, what's the biggest bust in the NFL ever? The common answer is Jamarcus Russell. In fact, I think if you asked 100 people before this week, who's the biggest bust in NFL history, I think 100 people say Jamarcus Russell. Now, I bet it might be 50-50 because if Bryce Young ends up getting dealt and he's bad, considering what Carolina had to give up for him with a 2-16 record, they tried to build around him this year. He's been really, really bad. No other way around it. Quite frankly, I think he deserves to be in that conversation right now of the biggest bust of all time, considering what Carolina gave up. The next reason here, it's not only has he been struggling, he's been struggling when the pocket has been clean. This is a red alert. Sirens are going off because you could talk about your quarterback being bad, and last year, his number one receiver was Adam Thielen. His offensive line was terrible. This offseason, they added a little bit more talent around him. They put some offensive linemen around him, and it's not a offensive line issue anymore. This is a Bryce Young not trusting himself issue. And did you know that Bryce Young was pressured only 4 of his 29 dropbacks week 2 against the Chargers? That was the lowest rate in the NFL. So you telling me the quarterback that saw the least amount of pressure against him week 2 put up these numbers? I mean, this is embarrassing. 18 of 26 for 84 yards and an interception. When you go back and you watch the tape, the amount of receivers that are open that Young's just simply not throwing the ball to, I don't know if he can't see them. I don't know if, and that's a general, I don't know if he can't see him because he's that small, but he's not finding the open guys right now, and it is clearly really, really bad right now in Carolina. The next thing is, you might think that he's just too tiny to play in the NFL. Like, I can't believe that I'm saying this because I was so confident in Bryce Young because he just has it up here to me. We're coming out of college, Heisman Trophy winner again. Like Nick Saban, Alabama, you can always pick apart that he was too small, but he's been too small his entire career. Like, it's not something new. And if you can't go out there and do things, something like a Kyler Murray's doing, I think Carolina is afraid to let him run and be an athlete because he's so small and they're afraid that he's going to get hurt. And, I don't quite frankly blame them. Bryce Young is listed at like 5'10", 200 and something pounds. He looks a lot smaller than that. I mean, I'm not a big guy by any sense, right? Like, I'm not a big guy. If I would be bigger than Bryce Young on a football field, that to me is a wild thing to think about. And when you look at him with the offensive line, when you look at him out there on the field, it's a clear of he might be too small to play in the NFL at the quarterback position. And I don't know if that's ever been said before. If the current team doesn't want him, this gives me flashbacks of when I told people, hey, there's multiple Raiders players that want Josh McDaniels fired. If you get to a point where your organization starts getting this split and you got a guy like Adam Thielen who is a very calm, cool, collected dude, and he's having a panic, I don't want to say panic attack, but he's like freaking out during a game of like, dude, I'm open, I'm not getting the football. And it's been very well reported that there's multiple players, multiple people that want Bryce Young to be benched, and they finally did it. I also wouldn't make the trade, and this might be one of the biggest reasons. I don't trust Luke Getsy, and I don't trust the Raiders quarterback coach, Rich Scangarello, to be able to mold him into the right guy. There's a lot of other NFL teams where, I'm being real, if I'm Bryce Young's agent, I'm Bryce Young, I don't want to go to the Raiders because they don't have the right personnel to get the most out of me. That's a fact. If I'm Bryce Young, I'm looking to go to somebody that I believe in that head coach. I believe in that offensive-minded guy in terms of quarterback coach, OC. The Raiders don't have that right now. So because I don't believe in that, that's the reason why I wouldn't make the trade here for Bryce Young. And then the last reason is the obvious one. If Carolina's asking for a first-round pick, I'm going to laugh in their face. Quite frankly, I think even if Carolina asked for a second-round pick, I would consider a second-round pick if it was conditional, and the idea of if Young goes out there and wins me, let's say, 9 to 10 games, I will pay that second-round pick. But he has been this bad, and with them benching them, if a team gives up a second-round pick, that's that team saying, I believe in my coaching staff. I think Carolina is just terrible. So coming up here, let's talk about the top teams that I think could make a deal for the former Heisman Trophy winner, for the former number 1 overall pick, for the former Alabama Crimson Tide quarterback, because the fact that he's been benched this early in his career, it's shocking. We did release a video over on our main YouTube channel here at Chat Sports. If you want to go check it out, I've put this link for you guys down in the comments and in the description of today's video. But as soon as Bryce Young got benched, everybody here at Chat Sports is like, where's he going to go? He's going to get traded. I promise you this. Bryce Young will get traded. I don't know where he's going to go necessarily, but the teams that I think make the most sense right now for Young in the short term, because Tua Tagovailoa just got put on the short-term IR, if I'm the Dolphins and I consider myself a playoff team, I make the deal for Bryce Young. You let him play right now. You see what he's got. If he's not your guy, all good, but you tell him, hey, as soon as Tua comes back, that's going to be our option. The long-term play, I think it's the Los Angeles Rams. If I'm Bryce Young, I want to go to L.A. I want to play with Sean McVay. I want to play in an offense that gives me some confidence. Now, I'm not playing him right away if I'm the Rams. I'm going to play Matthew Stafford in a season that right now has got a lot of injuries, a lot of bullshit going on. But then Stafford's getting really close to retiring. You let him learn behind Stafford. You let him learn in the Sean McVay offense, and you continue to let it go. So the question that I asked all y'all when I started this show, would you trade or pass on Bryce Young? Should the Raiders do it? Give me a trade. Give me a pass below, down in the comments section. The answer to this one, and I'm just going to be honest, I might upset some people. I might not. If I was the Las Vegas Raiders, I would trade for Bryce Young. That's a big if they sit him this season, unless he is needed. Unless Gardner Minshew and Aidan O'Connell both go down, I'm sitting Bryce Young. Recently, I listened to something Tom Brady said that he was like, in today's day and age in the NFL and football, people don't learn, where they're just forced to be able to put in a situation and they don't learn the quarterback position. If this is a trade that you make, you got to let him sit and he's got to learn how to be a quarterback in the NFL before you throw him out there in the fire. I also only do this trade if the Raiders get a new OC and a new quarterback coach. If AP and Telesco look at me and they go, Mitch, we're sticking with Luke Getsy, we're sticking with Rich Scangarello, I'm not making the trade. If the Raiders upgrade their offensive line, then I make the deal. Because here's the thing, Bryce Young would, I don't want to say that word, but like Bryce Young behind this Raiders offensive line, y'all, would be an absolute disaster. If the Raiders were willing to upgrade their offensive line a lot in the offseason, draft free agency, you're spending big at that ticket item, and then you get a brand new OC and quarterback coach, then yes, I would trade a 3rd and a 5th round pick for Bryce Young. Now, if you enjoyed today's show and you want to be able to interact with me on social media, I'm at Mitchell Renz 365, literally everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, that's where you can find me. I'm going to be posting a lot more videos now that the season has been going. And if the Raiders do make a trade for Bryce Young, I hope y'all are ready, because I'm going live here. We're going to be reacting to it. I don't think it's going to happen. I would give it a one just win, baby, for the Raiders trading for Bryce Young. However, though, I do think it's smart, and if I'm Telesco and I'm Antonio Pierce, you better pick up the phone. You better call Carolina just to see what it costs.